Hello, and welcome to another Cloud Podcast, a podcast designed to bring you stories from the smartest minds in IT, operations, and business, and learn how they're using cloud technology to improve business and the customer experience. All right. Well, we're excited today to be on another Cloud Podcast. Today, we have Peter Armaly with Oracle. He is the Senior Director of Customer Success Enablement. Peter, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on.
Thank you, Alex. And hi, Artie. How are you doing?
Doing great. Yeah. Thanks, Alex, again for having me as your co-pilot, your co-host today. Looking forward to this podcast. Huge fan of Oracle. I've, a big label, big name company, and to have someone from Oracle that oversees customer success enablement is absolutely amazing. So, Peter, welcome to the show. Give us a little background of who you are, what you do, what teams you oversee, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. Thanks. And I'll try and be somewhat brief about this because it's kind of complex. So my responsibilities at Oracle, as the title implies or states, is I'm the head of enablement. So what does that mean? I'm responsible for the overall design and delivery of training curriculum for our customer success managers, but also our customer success executives, which is the role that really is focused on the top tier strategic accounts, more like an account management quarterback. And also we have a new role, partner success managers. So we have varied curriculums to serve the needs of those specific roles. But moreover, the way we view, and when I say view, I'm talking about the leadership team of customer success. We view enablement as a strategic component of the service. So, I'm involved in a lot of the strategizing for how the service continue to evolve to address the needs of the customers. But through the work delivered by the specific roles of customer success managers, CSEs, and TSMs. So the way we view it is the market continues to evolve, the customers continually evolve and challenge us to deliver great service. What does that mean? We have to continually look at how is the service being delivered? How can it be made better? How can it be made more efficient? Obviously through the introduction of automation and metric-driven kind of dashboards and stuff, enabling tools for those roles to deliver the service better. And every time we do that, every time we kind of introduce a new kind of a tool or process, it forces us to consider, obviously, what does that mean for the humans delivering these services? So that's why I'm involved in a lot of the conversations with the senior leadership of customer success to make sure anything they're thinking of doing to advance the way their teams operate with customers, I'm part of that conversation to make sure that, and not just because I'm responsible for designing the training that needs to flow from that, but also because I've got a lot of experience in the industry. So, and that's where I'm going to kind of dovetail my history. I've been in customer success in kind of a formal capacity for about 12 or 13 years. First as a kind of a customer success architect. This is prior companies, and designing the models. In the early stages of when companies were really thinking of customer success at the big enterprise level, not just in the SaaS space, but back then I was in kind of a blended on-premise SaaS kind of company. And so we had to think about a lot of different things about customer success. And so I was kind of involved really early in figuring that out. And then I moved into leadership roles, customer success, building teams, building out the digital practice. Really had a lot of kind of success in that space to the extent that I was an early adopter of Gainsight as a tool, kind of recognized for the way we really pushed that envelope of using that tool to really advance kind of digital customer success. And that allowed me to kind of move into a role of customer success research at TSIA. I was the first kind of lead researcher there for this practice. And during that time, I met my current boss, Catherine Blackmore, who's really well known in the SaaS space. And she was at Oracle, and she asked me to kind of join her. And so she brought me here to help her, as she likes to think about it, help the company kind of transform and really get closer to the customers and really serve the needs better. And so this is kind of an ongoing evolution of not just Oracle, but for us and me to continually get better at figuring out how to really scale customer success at the same time, really allowing humans in those roles to really maximize their potential as part of the model. I hope that kind of was succinctly done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great background. And we're going to drill into a lot of those different areas here. Alex, I know you had a couple questions about the evolution and larger organizations. So I'll pass it over to you, Alex, for your question.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking, Peter, about, the customer experience, being like creating that architecture and framework around it. We mentioned before about how it's like, it's evolved over the last 10, 20 years, where this has become almost like a new realm for people to think about with this customer experience, customer success. How did that framework evolve for you? Where was it then versus where it's at today, and any changes that you've seen in between?
Yeah, that's great. I would say it evolved slowly. I felt, when I look back now, I feel like I was really part of a pioneering kind of community of people who were thinking there needs to be a way to help customers adopt the products so that they can kind of realize their expectations from the investment. And, value realization as a term goes back a long time. It goes back at least 20, maybe 25 or 30 years. But to make it kind of a programmatic approach is what was necessary. And I think customer success was the first entity that kind of gave people the idea that, well, maybe we can actually institutionalize this kind of practice or this notion of helping customers realize value from their investment. Prior to that, it was like you pay for services, you get some consulting people in, and maybe they kind of help you out in that way. And I had some dealings with that at prior companies. And so I think I learned that foundation in those kinds of roles before customer success. And so when customer success started first emerging in the SaaS world, I think I intuitively got it. And I was able to kind of conceptualize how would that look through formal roles, formal kind of operating rhythm, a service model that allowed a team to execute with that kind of destination in mind, the value realization, working with the customer, getting closer to the customer, listening to them, understanding, where along their journey they most need help. Maybe they need less help here, more help here. What kind of help would that be? And how do you kind of try to arrive at a state where you deliver that help just when they need it? Not before, not afterwards, and not too much. It's got to be a really nice nuanced balance of intersections. This is how I think of it. And I think the evolution, that kind of picture I'm painting didn't really happen until, I would say, it's happening a lot more now. I feel like the community has really taken off, and not just the community, but I think business understands it now. And I think it coincides with cloud. I think cloud definitely gave birth to customer success. Obviously Salesforce was the most notorious company that brought it to life, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But a lot of other companies in SaaS space really embraced that function and the roles to really make sure that they kept customers as much as they could and tried to grow those customers. But it's not isolated or confined to the SaaS space. I think customer success has expanded, and it rightfully should be across business now, but it's really followed the trajectory of cloud, which has really obviously now become the de facto business platform. And I think it's going to continue. I just feel like it's just going to continue. It's not just about customer success, it's about customer experience. So there's a lot of areas of companies now, and I see this at Oracle. A lot of organizations clearly understand this now, this need to really get closer to the customer. And by any other name, you can call it customer centricity, right? But I think people may not call it that, but that's essentially what we're talking about is leaders of all organizations, marketing, sales, everybody is starting to behave that way. And that's really, I think, what I, kind of summarizes customer experience is becoming more prominent, primarily because the cloud has enabled us to get there and do that in a better way.
Yeah, it's interesting how cloud has really created this new space. And with that, all the new technology that can circle the wagons around this experience for the customer, like you mentioned, Gainsight, and there's a slew of others to help organizations increase that experience, success, support, whatever that looks like. But it is a full ecosystem, and it is pulled in a lot of different departments that need to get involved. And that's what we've been hearing from a lot of other guests about, how you have to get other business units involved to really drive a positive customer experience.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's my experience too. And I think it's becoming, and I was going to say, I think it's becoming more kind of the generalized knowledge of everybody now that that's understood. But I think it's becoming really practical. People are experiencing it in their companies that if you really want to get true customer success, it can't just be about the CS function. It's got to be about the orchestration of all the kind of service elements that a customer will need. And when I say service elements, I mean, it could come from obviously support, but marketing, sales has opportunities during the customer journey, even after they sell, to provide value. And I think customer success needs to be I guess at this point anyways, in the way business is evolving, the lead entity to figure out how does that work? How does that, because they're the ones who have the closest proximity to customers, that they should take the lead, because customers don't want a lot of people always talking to them all the time. They would prefer to have one really credible voice. And I'm not suggesting customer success is any more credible than anyone else. Okay, I'm just saying that from a customer point of view, it's better, less friction, if you can kind of reduce it down to a kind of a single kind of entity that they can kind of interact with. And then that entity would be the one responsible for orchestrating the overall attention.
Some of our viewers have CSM teams of like 2 or 10, and they need to evolve and they need to grow, and they're going through an understanding of what tool sets to use, but also a lot of process too. What does the customer journey look like? Where are the right touch points? And the question that I have for you is, how structured should these playbooks or scripts really be? Or should it be kind of off script, where you allow your CSMs to kind of manage their own accounts to a certain extent, and then you kind of wheel them back in with some training and some coaching just to keep them on pace so that they're working as a team? Like, what is your viewpoint about that, especially for a company that's evolving and growing?
Yeah, I would say it probably makes sense for a smaller company to allow their CSMs to have some extended leash to do what they feel is right, especially if they have some experience for the customer. But I say that at the same time saying, don't lose sight of that as a leader. Allow them to do it, but try to figure out with them, how can you programatize that? So you're doing a great job. Let's break it down what you did well. We're getting good feedback from the customer on these specific kind of tasks that you performed or executed at this particular phase. Let's figure out how we can kind of put that into a playbook so that we can start imagining as we grow, we can scale the service without necessarily hiring, you times 300. We'd rather hire maybe you times 3 or 4 or 5. And I think that's the only way you can think about it, is get people out there who are good, who do things really well, but figure out why they're doing things really well, and make sure you're triangulating with the customer, because you have the CSM's perception that they knocked it out of the park. You have this kind of like aura that, wow, got a rock star here, but make sure you check with the customer. Is that their perception? Maybe not. Maybe this not so much a rock star, but just like a hillbilly. whatever, and a really likable person, but they probably have ideas how the service could improve, and then I think that those kinds of different kind of inputs would allow you to kind of scale. So I agree that it makes sense for smaller companies to allow that more freedom, but not for larger companies. I think larger companies, you probably lose sight of that really quickly. Mm-hmm. So I think you'd rather have, we have a few hundred CSMs, and with no way we can allow them to just do what they, although we can probably trust many of them, it's not standardized. And what we ultimately want is for our customers to feel that our CSMs represent a brand that they can expect from Oracle, a certain kind of quality of service, a certain quality of attention and credibility. And it's really difficult to do that if you've got 300 people doing their own thing. So, definitely it wouldn't work for large companies, but smaller ones, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I like a little earlier, just about when we talked about how there's different departments, it almost seems like the customer experience is you can look at it as the quarterback, right? Or the orchestrator of this journey, this customer journey from, you talk about sales to, professional services, and then afterwards with the CSMs. And it can be really tricky. And I think as we're talking about going from an organization that has 2 to 10 up to one, like, if you have 200, how you have to have processes in place, and you have to create that blueprint. You can't just like Wild West it out there. Otherwise the brand can diminish from there. How have you seen, just with Oracle and being the brand that it is, like getting the CSMs to buy into the brand and to what you're trying to push out there as far as the message for Oracle, and are some of the challenges that might be around them pushing that?
Yeah, that's it's a challenge, I would say, because we're growing quite a bit. So we hire a lot of people from outside. So the way I've done it, I designed the curriculum. I've grounded everyone in the first 2 modules of the training is not about product. It's not even about our service. It's about I call it, the first module is called strategy, and it's all about cloud strategy. It's vendor agnostic. It's not even about Oracle. It's about cloud. It's about SaaS. And what constitutes that training is really like external, sources. Could be research bodies. It could be McKinsey reports. It could be, in other words, content that helps educate and kind of ground the student in what's the base of this technology that your customers are trying to operate off of with our application. So our organization is really responsible just for customers who buy into the Oracle SaaS applications, business applications. And so they sit on top of, obviously, the cloud infrastructure, but we need our CSMs to understand the cloud infrastructure. So that's what the strategy module is about. And in the same module, then we talk or expose them to our senior executives kind of pitches around Oracle's vision for its customers and what it wants to do as a company and a brand. And then I've got recordings from each of the VPs of the different kind of what we call them pillars, ERP, supply chain, HCM, the CX space, service cloud, all that kind of stuff. And so they have to watch these executives speak about the purpose of these applications. And then the second module they flow into is all about the role of customer success. And there, again, I don't talk about anything about Oracle. I just expose them to what are the fundamentals that we believe you should know to really be a good customer success manager. And that's all about data. What is advocacy? How do you orchestrate effort to address customer issues? Things like that are good anywhere. And so I like to think of it, if you graduate from these 2 modules, you can take this anywhere. Yeah. You'd probably be in pretty good position. All you need to then learn is the service model and the product. I'm not minimizing, there's a lot of effort there too. But so once they get those two weeks done of that training, then they move into the service model and the product. And so, the way we think about it is that allows us to really get everyone on the same page. To your question, Alex, about the brand, And hopefully at the end of this training, they've got a really good kind of understanding, A, of what Oracle's trying to do in the market, B, of what the mission of customer success is at industry at large. What is the role of customer success? What's the function across the business landscape of customer success? And I hope they understand that. And then our particular kind of way we deliver that as well with respect to the products that we sell. So there's kind of a logical kind of flow of our training that allows people to graduate as pretty good, I would say, Oracle ambassadors. They're not kind of brainwashed, but they understand what the company is trying to do, and they try as best as possible represent a certain kind of an image. And then what's good about it is that they got a good solid understanding about the service model at the same time.
Yeah, I want to drill into that a little bit, but put a little twist to my question at the end. So your team supports a lot of different clouds. You know, you got your ERP, you got your service or support cloud, but all a lot under your portfolio, and you guys are also B2B, so you're supporting businesses that may only use one cloud or two or three or five. How do you create a sense of support or community around those clouds? And then what happens when you have someone who needs support across multiple, and they may, how do you make sure that they have the same great experience if they're talking to someone about ERP versus social cloud? Like, how do you create that synergy internally from a training and coaching standpoint?
Yeah, so I think it helps that we've divided our solutions, our applications into front and back office. So back office is ERP, SEM, HCM. I'm sure I'm forgetting one. And then the front office is marketing cloud, sales cloud, service cloud, and a few other things. And so there are vice presidents in charge of the teams, the customer success teams on each of those front office and back office. So they report into my boss, ultimately, Catherine, who is the head of all of North America customer success. And so she's obviously got purview to the entire customer base, all 7,000 or 8,000 accounts who bought into one or more of these solutions, either from front or back office or both, as you're suggesting. And so to answer your question, I think that's where it starts, is that at the executive level, there's an appreciation. They're in the same meetings, they hear each other's kind of challenges or opportunities. And so I think there's just kind of a natural kind of osmosis that occurs, that although I'm focused on front office, I'm hearing a lot of stuff about the back office. And I know them. I've been working with these guys for 3 years now, and I can see it, that they actually are interested in the other's business. And so they ask the right good questions. And so they're just keep learning themselves. And I think that flows down. It's not perfect. We still need to work on getting the manager director level to be more exposed, I think, to the other side of the businesses, their peers there. And I think there's some of that goes on, but I'd like to see a lot more of it. It's a function of time. At the end of the day, it's not that they don't want to, it's just a matter of time. And so if we get that to happen, though, I think the kind of the natural kind of awareness and appreciation for the other parts of the business will happen at the team level, at the individual contributor level. And we have to have that to happen, because more and more customers are buying more than one product now, and more application. And so, and we don't want to have to assign a customer success executive to each of these accounts, because it's not possible. And those individuals are really more specialized. They've got 30 years of experience in business. Many of them have been former executives, and they're really high powered, but they're not going to be talking about products. They're talking more at the relationship level. But for our CSMs, we need them to be good at their product, but we also need them to start getting better at, say, front office applications, at least be able to speak about it, talk about the power of the integrations and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a work in progress. How it works in our training is we build it out, we make recommendations. I work with some of the managers and say, you know what, I've noticed this CSM is really eager. I would just suggest to you, why don't you put it on their next plan that they should challenge themselves and learn this other application over there, because maybe in your space, you should know, you're the manager, you should know your territory. Are there companies that are starting to look at this stuff? And you'd probably want some of your people to get ready for that, and not after the fact, but before the fact, right? So.
Yeah, that's it. There's a lot to consider when it comes to that, and having multiple product lines and two separate, front end, back end, takes a lot of effort to get it right. And it sounds like your boss has got it covered, because she's definitely been around.
She's a visionary. Yeah, she's a real visionary, and she's super excited about the future and transforming, not just Oracle being part of that transformation, but she likes being part of the customer success world, and she likes where it's going, and she wants to still be part of that thought process.
Yeah, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the book that you're writing and what that's going to entail, and what, kind of the main premise of the book and what you're trying to teach and get out there into the world.
Yeah, so it's probably helpful to say that I'm working with Catherine on this, but also another individual. He was the former chief customer officer for Oracle. He's retired now, runs his own consulting company, so he's very, very busy. But the three of us got together, and we've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of passion, and it's not about Oracle, it's about business. And so our point of the book is really to help senior executives. It's really focused on C-level executives. It's going to be to help them understand they continue to struggle to really get close to the customer in the way they need to in the modern kind of subscription economy, primarily because their organizations aren't talking the same language. All the organizations are headed up by executives, really smart people, really high credentials. They maybe run their businesses really well, but at the kind of the company level, there's not a lot of tie-in of how these organizations need to kind of work together around a single point of view of the customer. And I think that's probably no big surprise to a lot of people when they hear that. I think people, when I talk to even my friends about this, they're all like nodding their heads. Well, we know about silos, right? True. But with what we're understanding now through a lot of interviews and our own experience, we've ran a big survey. It's a big issue. Because it's preventing companies from really driving up board level metrics like retention, growth, churn. Those numbers are really kind of frustratingly kind of static for a lot of companies, or even dropping in some respect, because they're not solving or addressing this issue where the leadership, there's no one really kind of taking charge of making sure that customers is the focal point. And so customer centricity needs to become more than just kind of a buzzword. It has to be actually lived in the C-suite. And too often, customers, CEOs will hire a CCO and just say, "Okay, you take care of this." Well, that's not the way you need to address this, actually. Or if you are going to address it that way, give them a lot of power. So then that's not happening. And so the book will really be a very prescriptive kind of guide. And we've broken it out at where the capability gaps are for companies. And we write chapters for each of the capability gaps. And at the end, we'll provide a prescriptive way for senior executives to start moving towards a better future with their team, with their executive team, to operate at a much more focused on the customer way. And hopefully it gets published. I think we're targeting maybe February, March of next year.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's great having, I love the books where it's less fluff and more just, here's what to do. Here are the formulas, here are the blueprints on how to fix whatever the gaps are that you're trying to fix. In this case,
that's good feedback, Alex, because we just had this conversation on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, think of a CEO, right? An executive. They just get to the point. They're always black and white typically, and just want to tell me how to right the ship, or tell me how to fix it or whatnot. But I think it's true. And we talked earlier on our call before about getting agreement on, is this about revenue? Is there a revenue goal? Is it adoption? Is it churn, like you're talking about? And I think, sorting through what's important and having it come from the very top.
I'm a believer that customer success will never really truly be seen as an adult until it accepts some revenue responsibility in kind of a hard way. Hard meaning like, here's your number and you got to figure out how to attain it. And because it's still more the norm that customer success leans on sales to be the ones to do the renewals, and we do too, by the way. But I don't think that's our end state. I believe we continually need to move in the direction where customer success will assume responsibility, because then by doing that, there's a couple of benefits. I mean, the customer will feel a lot less friction if there's a single kind of body that's driving their success, responsible for driving the success. I mean, they're responsible, but responsible for overseeing and guiding them in that direction. And when they get to that place where success is being realized, why would you not want to have the conversation with the person who's helped you get there? I mean, that would, if I'm a customer, I would say, yeah, let's have this conversation. I'm happy to have it. Let's talk about the future and growth. And I think too often customer success managers and in our industry, our community at large, there's a lot of reluctance still to even entertain that. They keep leaning on the excuse that, well, it'll destroy the relationship. I don't really buy that at all, frankly, because I've lived it actually, where I have been that person, and I've shared the kind of opportunities. Let's look at these things, and been successful at that. And so I don't see why, if we get the right kind of personalities in place, the right kind of leadership to help the teams grow in that direction, customer success can be very successful, becoming that. And TSIA talks about this, how you have to look at your customer journey. Sales can definitely drive all the pre-sales, new logos, and that's what you want them to do. But for the existing customers, you should actually be relying on people who have the experience and the proximity and the knowledge of their business to really drive those conversations. A lot of training involved there, though. Sorry.
A lot of training. It's not flip a switch.
No.
Well, I know we're coming up on time, but we always like to end the show with something a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more fun. Alex and I, we always ask this question. We're all consumers. We're all on the other side of the customer experience. We're on the consumer side. Peter, tell us a time recently, hopefully, where you had a great experience with a brand or a company, and what made it great. Maybe it started sour and then got better, or just right off the bat, it was just a great experience. If you don't have one off the top of your head, Alex and I will try to jump in with one that's recent.
Well, it'll be about B2C, I guess. I mean, most of my experiences are B2C. And very quickly, I built a small cabin in the woods 3 hours north of Toronto. I go there most weekends in the summer. I built it myself. And this year I've built a shower. And it's off grid. So I've got to factor in a lot of things like my solar power system, and I've got to buy a hot water heater, and I got to run on propane, and I'm not a gas fitter, and no one's going to go back there to help me out. So I have to figure it all out. And Home Depot has been indispensable for me. The website has been amazing. I got to tell you, I come back after a weekend, what else do I need? I have to look up, find particular gas fittings. The website's fantastic. It brings up what I need. I just order it. I pick it up on Wednesday. I go back up. These guys have it nailed, I swear, for what I need. My experience this summer has been, I needed a supplier that was convenient for me, for my time schedule, and their ability to kind of deliver what I needed in a very timely manner. They just nailed it for me.
Yeah, that's the Home Depot is just amazing. We actually, a spoiler alert, we're going to have someone from Home Depot on the podcast in the next episodes. And
good plug, Peter.
We did good plug. We did a pre-call with him, and they just have it figured out. Their stores are warehouses, and everything's online as well, and you get things shipped directly to your door. Within 24, 48 hours or whatever that is, because they have this distributed warehouse ecosystem where they can just have storage there, like lumber and nails and gas fittings.
Things around,
yeah. And if you ever, I used to have an old friend, a family friend who worked at Home Depot, and he actually retired with Home Depot because he loved the family community feel that they all share as employees, because they all have their own side projects. They're all tinkering with things, very hands-on. So they're all like-minded people, and it's great, just a great experience and great ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, that was a trick question. I didn't know you guys were going to ask me that, so I'm glad I had.
I know, already just threw a loop, right? Threw a monkey wrench in that one. I'm more curious, what's the longest amount of time you've spent at the cabin off grid?
So last summer, the first summer of COVID, my wife and I went up there, and I tried to work from there. I was at Oracle and I was trying to work from there, and my bosses were all like, "Oh, go ahead, fine. You got your own thing, and as long as we can talk to you." So I've got satellite internet installed, but the thing is, satellite, like this is true satellite. We're not going to a nearby tower; it's going to a satellite, and so there's a lot of lag time. So Zoom was miserable, but I could do other things. Obviously email and Slack and all the research I need to do, and so I did a lot of work up there. I spent about 90 days there last summer. But off and on. But the longest stretch, Alex, to answer your question, was 2 weeks solid up there.
Pretty good.
And I learned during that 2 weeks I need to upgrade my solar power system because we had a big storm and I went 3 days with no light. I was trying to work off my computer, so I had to upgrade at the end of the season. So.
That's great. I love that. And I'm curious, are you using Elon Musk's Starlink satellite up there?
I looked into that, but it's twice the price of what I'm paying now. We might never know.
I'm curious what the latency will be when he gets his going.
It's supposed to be way better.
Right, because then you can do Zoom calls. My biggest thing was like, it'd be great to go off grid, right? But you want to make sure you can at least have the voice conversation, even if you don't have the video piece.
That's right. Even the voice stuff, I would be on calls and I would speak and there'd be a long pause and people would say, okay, I understood everything you said, but it was like a 6-second gap.
Gotcha. Soon, I think soon enough, we'll get there to where we can get voice over satellite. And then once that happens, or video, then we all can go remote off into the wilderness. But Peter, man, it was great having you on. Such great insight into the
I really enjoyed it. Nice talking with both you and Artie.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to seeing the book come out. Hopefully it gets published.
I'll start dropping some promos.
Yeah.
We're working with an editor who's driving us pretty hard on a marketing campaign. So
perfect.
It'll start happening towards the end of the calendar year. We'll start dropping hints about it and stuff. So
very good. Well, thanks again for joining us, Artie. Great co-host as always.
Thank you guys. Peter, thanks again.
Okay, bye for now.
Well, that wraps up the show for today. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to join us next week as we bring another guest in to talk about the trends around cloud contact center and customer experience. Also, you can find us at adleradvisors.com, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week on another Cloud Podcast.